Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, welcoming you every week so that you and I can benefit from my conversation with a recognized communication expert. And that's why we're the Biz Communication Show, and I'm the Biz Communication Guy. Our guest today is someone extra special because I've known her, I've worked with her in radio, and she has a grand contribution to make for us today. Her name is Kristina Rhoades, and believe it or not, she lives in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I knew her when she was in Gainesville, Georgia. We worked together for 14 months at WBCX radio station here, where she was the station manager. I think the best way to introduce Kristina is to use her own words because she is a marvel at putting her thoughts into writing and into speaking. So let's listen now to Kristina. After enduring a spinal cord injury at just 10 months old and being paralyzed from the waist down, a life in a wheelchair has allowed for a variety of rich and interesting life experiences, none of which I would ever dream of swapping for that of a, quote, normal life. I found at a young age that my happiness, general outlook on the world, and ability to connect with others were completely in my control. My life has proved to be filled with joy, love, laughter, challenges, and success thus far, and the best is yet to come. What an outlook. And so now let's welcome Kristina Rhoades. Hello, Kristina.
Hello, Bill. Thank you so much for having me. That was a very warm introduction.
What a privilege for me and for all of us. And mentioning the fact that you've been in a wheelchair all of your life that you can remember, I have a number of questions to ask you because I think many of us who aren't in that situation don't know how to talk with someone who is, what words are acceptable, which ones are not. And so we'll focus on that for a little while to begin with. Let's say, for example, that you come into a room. Obviously, people are going to notice that you're in a wheelchair. Now, what is it that we should not say? What is it possibly we should say? For example, it might be almost natural for me to walk over to you and say, "Oh, Kristina, were you in an accident?" I imagine you've had that said to you. What are some of the tips that you would give us in that situation?
Yeah, Bill, thanks so much. It's a really good question. I think we all often are a little bit uncomfortable or a little unsure of how we should carry ourselves when we're in a situation that we perceive as new, that we, when we're around somebody or something that we perceive as different from ourselves. So I think the first thing to say, which is the most important, is that even though somebody has a disability, like myself, we are still people, and we're still the same on the inside as every other person out there. So if somebody walks into the room, and you notice I use normal language here, I use the word walk into a room, even if I do, that uses a wheelchair or that has some other disability that you notice, my advice to you is to treat them like a person, to treat them how you would want to be treated. And so that means respect. That means respecting the person that they are, but also their privacy. Consider how you would want somebody to treat you. If you walked into a room of people that were completely foreign from you, and all eyes were on you, would you want somebody to approach you and ask you personal questions about your life? No, probably not. Maybe in some situations that might be okay, but for the most part, you want to just have respect for another human being. There'll be a time and a place to discuss how they got in that situation, and you'll probably be aware of when your relationship has gotten to that point where you can ask personal questions to somebody. But just because somebody has a physical disability or physical difference doesn't really invite other people to come and question them about that. So you just want to treat another person how you would want to be treated.
The fact is, and I think you've summed it up quite well, you don't want to be treated as different. And to me, one of the nuances here, and I want your opinion on this, but it would seem to me that a person in a wheelchair, if they're long range and not just because of an accident, I would think that you would prefer, I am a person with a disability. I'm not a disabled person. Is that correct?
It's absolutely correct. It's just a characteristic about me. It's a small piece of who I am. Just like you have brown hair and you live in Georgia and you're married and, you know, pieces about your history that made you who you are. That's what my disability is. It doesn't define me or anybody else that has a disability. It's a part of who I am and has influenced the person that I've become today. But at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all just people.
And what, to me, the situation here that people need to realize is, yes, they really are well meaning when they ask you, did you have an accident? Or, and this could happen if a wheelchair or a crutch or a cast or something else that shows you're not just like 99% of the people. Um, it's you know it's something natural that they would ask. However, there's always a danger in that. I have a relative who told me about one time he was playing golf with a guy that he didn't know very well, and he said to this golf companion, "I see you're limping. Did you have an injury of some kind?" And the other golfer said to him, "No, I had polio as a child." Now, again, this person didn't mean any harm by asking the question, but what you really do not want to do, it seems to me that you're bringing to the surface is don't point out someone else's differences. If they want to discuss the differences, that's up to them. Would that be the right approach?
Absolutely. You know, really it's about you know, when somebody asks about a disability, it's usually asking like what's wrong? What's wrong with you? Why are you, you know, why are you broken or why are you different? Why aren't you like me? That's really like the question, and as well-meaning as it is, because we are curious humans, that's our nature, to be curious about things that we don't understand. I think people don't realize that that is the question: is why are you not, you know, exactly like me, and what's wrong with you? And so at the end of the day, I don't think anything is wrong with me. And if somebody's curious about my condition, or they want to come up and compliment my wheelchair, or say they liked how I you know, opened that door by myself, or whatever it may be, I am absolutely, and I think most of us are, open to conversation and engaging and curiosity. But when it's a question about why I'm broken, and that's our first interaction, you know, that's not the best start to a relationship and can make people feel real uncomfortable. And now I also want to say, Bill, not every person is exactly the same. So you have as many types of personalities and people with disabilities as you do in the non-disability community. Um, so because one person may be offended if you ask them what's wrong, doesn't mean that all people are going to feel that way. So I happen to be a motivational speaker. I've always enjoyed connecting with people and interacting. So it doesn't really upset me if somebody walks up and wants to inquire about my disability. But that's just because that's who I am, and because it's something that I enjoy, connecting and educating and motivating people. So I don't want to make blanket statements and say that everybody that's in a wheelchair feels the same way, but I'm giving guidelines for you to, you know, that would be the most appropriate, so you can know that you probably won't hurt somebody's feelings if you kind of follow by the advice that we share today.
Excellent. Here's an experience a friend of mine had that I would like your reaction to. She had a fall down the steps in her home. She had a severe ankle injury. She was in a wheelchair for quite a number of weeks. Her comment to me about that was, well, you know, Bill, when I would go into a public place, such as a mall, one of the things that I experienced was that people would not look at me. They were many people would not look at me. It seemed that I was making them uncomfortable. They didn't know how to handle the situation. Do you find people avoiding eye contact with you? Has that been an experience? And if so, what would you say about that?
Definitely, Bill. That's pretty common. Again, it just goes back to, you know, somebody being uncomfortable and not sure how to handle themselves. My experience, which is funny, and I'm sure your friend can relate, is they do stare. Most people stare a lot, but the moment that you make eye contact is when they break away and can't look at you anymore. So it's kind of interesting that, hey, you were looking until I looked at you, you know, and then they're, you know, they're uncomfortable and they realize they've been looking and they, you know, they want to be polite and look away. But I really make an effort to lock eye contact with people when I feel them looking and smile at them. It often takes people off, you know, by surprise a little bit because they don't expect me to be happy and smiling and all that good stuff that comes with the stereotype of somebody with a disability. But, you know, I guess my advice for other people is to be aware if you're doing that. If you're staring at another person, it might make them a little uncomfortable. But if they do look at you, it's okay they're just a human being. It's okay to smile back. It's okay to say hello, to wave, whatever it may be, but to know that you're connecting with an actual person and not just curious about their situation.
While we're talking about people staring at you or encounters that you have when you're out on the street, I really would love for you to share with our viewers and listeners, and we are on podcast as well as on video. Please share with our viewers and listeners that incident where you were with your parents in New York City, walking through the city. They got a few feet ahead of you. A beggar came and asked you for some money. Finish that story. I think it's a classic.
So, Bill, like I said, I love connecting with people, and so I don't mind if it's, you know, a homeless person on the street or, you know, the head of a company. I like to engage with people and learn about them and stop for a moment and connect. And so we were in Battery Park, I think, in New York City, and there was a gentleman, a homeless gentleman sitting there, and I think he was playing a little drum, which I'm a sucker for music. So anytime somebody's playing live music, I'm all about taking a moment and watching them share their art. So I stopped, held back for a minute and watched him play his little drum, and was pulling out $1 when he began, you know, he finished up and began asking me questions. And he said, you know, why are you in a wheelchair? Like most people. And I said, well, I got injured when I was 10 months old and I've been doing this a long time. And he said, you know, the typical, oh, I'm so sorry. And I said, oh no, you know, I live a great life and I'm happy. And then he proceeded to say, well, do you believe in God? And I said, well, sure, you know, yeah, I'm a spiritual person. And he said, well, you must not believe in God enough. And I said, oh, pardon me. And he said, if you truly believed in God, you wouldn't be in that wheelchair and he would have healed you and you would be walking. At that moment, I was a little confused because I just got done telling the nice gentleman that I had a wonderful life and I am rolling through New York City on a beautiful day and happy as can be and have a big smile and cool shades on. And I don't look at all, you know, pathetic, I don't believe. And then realized he was sitting on the ground and he was homeless. So I'm pretty sure I was in a better situation, and I advised him maybe he should take his own advice and he might want to say a couple extra prayers if that's how that it works. And I decided to hang on to the $1 that day and give him some good old-fashioned advice instead. But yeah, it's interesting what people's perceptions are, how sad they think my life is just because I'm sitting instead of walking around on 2 feet. So.
Well, I know, Kristina, from personal experience that anybody going along the sidewalk with you better be rather rapid because you can move those wheels. In fact, at Brenau University, one of your nicknames was Hot Wheels, and deservedly so. In the introduction, I did not mention a few items that I could have. You were Miss Wheelchair California when you lived in California. You've been a national advocate for disability rights, manager of the radio station WBCX, Brenau University. I did say that. The greatest honor, you say, is that you are a mother of your daughter, Cameron. You've been featured in magazines and online publications. You're a model for products that improve lives of the disabled. You're a life coach, author, and speaker. Those should not be left out. It's not all that common, I suppose, for wheelchair residents to become mothers. Is that correct?
You know, it didn't used to be, Bill. I got injured in 1984, and so grew up in a wheelchair. And I traveled around. I had a military family. My grandpa was in the military, and so we traveled around a bit when I was young. I went to many elementary schools.
You know, when you were Miss Wheelchair California, which I mentioned, you, I'm sure, did some of the traditional personal appearances, and maybe you had a fancy dress and a crown, and you went to a lot of public events, but you also used your influence politically. Tell us a little bit about that. You didn't just take it as a title, but you became an active spokesperson. Tell us how you did that and what you did.
Yeah, that was a real honor, Bill, to be able to represent the women and people with disabilities of California, and work to support bills and laws that elevated the community and supported the community. And so I got to meet with public officials and different leaders in the state of California. And one in particular, one time, a House representative was proposing a bill that would limit public access for people with disabilities, for people with physical disabilities specifically. And the disability community, many advocates in the community had been meeting with him and talking with him for months and months, and hadn't been gaining a lot of traction. And so I decided to go in and see what I could do to you know, find common ground, really, is what it's about. It goes again back to the fact that we're all humans here, and he was trying to do a job to protect business owners in California. And so I wanted to go in and as a fellow human being, as one of his constituents, share why we were concerned. So we went and had lunch one day together and went over, you know, first our personal lives and who he was as a person and his family. And I went over my life and brought my companion dog Chevy along to the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, I talked about why the bill that he was proposing would impact my community in a negative way, and shared why I was concerned and why it would limit my own independence, and it would limit my ability to go out and be a successful, you know, successful person in the community. And so by finding that common ground, I think he actually heard me as a person for the first time, instead of an advocate that was angry at him and against him. And the next week he dropped the bill.
That's wonderful.
And so that was pretty eye-opening, and it's kind of how I've approached things like that since then, to be able to find common ground as human beings. And that's how we move the needle forward.
Excellent. Kristina, you know, because you and I worked together in radio for 14 months, there was one thing we were always aware of, and that was the clock. That darn clock just keeps moving, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
so we can't talk forever. So I have time for just one more question, and it's a very important one. I know that you have been very influential and very helpful and a morale builder in approaching people who face a disability, maybe a severe injury, maybe a life-changing injury. And in many cases, you have come to them early in that experience. Tell us what you say to those people.
That in many cases, life is just getting started. Often a traumatic experience like that, a life-changing event, really encourages and sometimes forces us to be the most we can be, and to really dig in and find out who we are and what we have inside of us and the strength that we have inside of us. And so it also asks us to question who we thought we were. So, I see many people that have a spinal cord injury, that much of who they were was defined by their physical ability and their ability to walk. And when they have this life-changing event, they realize that isn't who they really were, that there is so much inside of them that they never had to dig out, that they never had to utilize, because things were going pretty much okay. And they were getting by with how they've been doing things. So we all have more inside of us than we know. An experience like this demands that we kind of tap into that a little bit. And Bill, that I wouldn't change this. You read some words of mine in the intro, and it's absolutely true that this life experience that I've been fortunate enough to have, in so much part, is because I've had a different, more unique life experience, because my path has been slightly different than average. And so I've been able to have unique perspectives and look at life in a little bit of a different way than maybe the average bear. And so I guess in closing, if you're going through something like this, or somebody is going through a life-changing event, hang on and know that it's not over. And specifically if it's a physical disability, the technology and what the resources that we have available to us in this day and age make just about anything possible, no matter what sport or what activity you want to do. So just find some resources, find some support in your community, and you're going to be okay.
Kristina, you identified yourself a short time ago in our conversation as a motivational speaker, and you just demonstrated that you are. Any audience would be blessed to have you address them. Any individual is blessed to know you, and I'm fortunate to be one of those. We, I'm sure, have people who will want to get in touch with you. So please give us your contact information.
Yeah, you can visit my website, www.KristinaRhoades.com. And I'm sure Bill will include that in his publication for this online, so you can see how to spell that. But that's Kristina with a K and RHOADES.com. And it's got all my contact information there. So you can shoot me emails, you can connect with me on social media, but that's the best place to get in touch.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being with us. Just as I expected, informative, uplifting, challenging, terrific. Thank you. And now that Kristina has shared her contact information, I'm glad to share mine. Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is bizcommunicationguy.com. I will welcome your connecting there. Sign up for my online newsletter. Check my services for corporations and for business leaders. And be sure to be with us again next week, when, again, the Biz Communication Show will bring you an outstanding communicator, as certainly we did today. Any closing thoughts, Kristina?
No, Bill, I just really appreciate what you're doing, because I've learned much from you over the years and your guests that you've had on your shows. And I'm glad that you're continuing to share your knowledge and connect people. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Kristina. You will be back as a guest, I can assure everyone. Thanks to those of you who joined us on the video portion of the show and on podcast as well. We look forward to having you with us again next week. I'm Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy.